morning, noon from Rye, New York, and I have here again, as you've seen in the video, if you notice, second time my good friend Wendy Federman, who's not far away from me, I believe.
New Jersey, yeah, Bergen County, New Jersey.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Where everything's legal in New Jersey, right?
Everything's legal in New Jersey. Whatever you want.
Yeah, you see, I give you some Broadway quotes here. I think that's what he said in Hamilton, right? Yeah, isn't that?
Yeah, there's so many good ones in that show. So many good ones.
And let me give you a little bit of background. I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about what's going on in Broadway. Where things start to happen again. What happened before? What happened to the investments? What happened to the tickets, to the sales? What's going on? Foreign tourists, at least from Europe, cannot come here right now. We'll talk about all of that, but let me just give you a little bit of a reminder about Wendy, and I'll give you the official one and then the unofficial one. So, Wendy Federman is a 9-time Tony Award winning theater and film producer. She also received 2 Oliver Awards, 10 Drama Desk Awards, 18 Outer Critics Circle Awards, 16 Drama League Awards, and a GLAAD Media Award for many of her nearly 90 co-productions. Wendy currently nominated for 6 additional Tony Awards for the 2019-2020 season. The upcoming Tony Awards will be, that was on September 26th on CBS. Wendy co-founded, I'm reading a bio that's not updated on that part. She co-founded an annual fundraising event, Broadway's Got Guts, for the Crohn's and Cold Foundation. She is the chair of the nominating committee of the annual Chito Rivera Awards and serves as advisor for several unique works of entertainment, including Practical Inc. Am I reading it right? I should put my fonts larger. I don't know why I'm trying so hard. Okay. In addition, Wendy had served as a proud member of the John F. Kennedy Center's National Committee for the Performing Arts. Wendy received the 2020 Award of Excellence from the Capitol Speakers Club of Washington, D.C., and was also a 2019 recipient of the Ellis Islands Medal of Honor. Wendy has also served as a trustee on several significant boards, including the Foundation for Gender Equality, Bergen Performing Arts Center, MCC Theater, Gilda's Club, NNJ, and Penguin Repertory Theater. And so this is the official one. Just to give you a little bit of the unofficial bio. I mean, the way I know Wendy, and I think she's really got an interesting story there because, and she would explain that in her own words, but Wendy came from a family business. I believe 3rd generation, or right?
3rd.
And I think like you see in so many other family businesses, this wasn't what she was all about. I think she was excited about the actual getting into the family business. It wasn't something that made her tick. They sold the company, which was for her great, and then gave her the opportunity to do something she's really passionate about. And we all know that, when we talk about high net worth and we talk about passion investment, and we talk about arts and collections, and I should tell you one time about how much was spent on my Star Wars collection since COVID started. I don't want to say it here because my wife might be listening. So when we talk, I'll share with you. But stuff like that, and many times it's been criticized as, this is something the wealthy people can afford. But usually it's a dire risk. If you go to film, you're gonna lose your money. It's crazy. And I know many families that went down that route. And I think what's interesting about Wendy is that she became one of the most successful, as I just shared with you, producers on Broadway, which proves that you can take something you're passionate about and don't just do it because you can, or you're tired of where you were before and you just want to have fun, but because you actually like it and you know what you're doing. And she's on top of everything that's going on Broadway. So I'm very, very fortunate. And so that's by the way, the lovely connection between our world of family business and all of that, where we met initially. And I believe it was even when you just started Broadway.
Right.
And all the way where now you're more recognized for what you do now than anything in your past. So good afternoon, good noon.
Good to see you, Danny. Good to be speaking with you. Our last time doing this was April 2020, and it's been an interesting ride for certainly for everybody, but I know for my industry in particular, some a lot of courage has been shown, a lot of strength has been shown, a lot of tenacity has been shown by so many people. And we are coming back. I mean, thank goodness for the vaccines and for good modern science and the anticipation. People are ready to go out. They are prepared to go out. They want to go out. And, so often during this time, I would read, history books on what went on with the, in the, late 1919, 1920s, in that era, when we came out of that Spanish flu and into the roaring 20s, and that era of the early 20s that had some of the greatest composers and musicians and nightlife and arts that took place, and creativity. So if I can look at, the rainbow after the terrible storm, it's going to be this re-welcoming of arts that we're already seeing with events, not quite Broadway yet, but other arts events, that everything that's open, certainly here in our New York area, sells out immediately because people are ready and want to go out. I think we've really come to realize and appreciate the need for not only for human connection, to, again, quote Hamilton, be in the room where it's happening. Thank God, Zoom has been wonderful, and streaming and our TVs and programming is great, but there's just nothing like being there in person and having that personal experience with other human beings. So we are seeing it now, and we are all highly encouraged that come the reopening of the official Broadway shows, that we are going to be, we were really at a very busy moment. To remind your viewers, Broadway was just having its hugest year. We had just come off a season of almost ticket sales of a little under $2 billion. We contribute almost $15 billion to the economy of New York City, employing a little bit under 100,000 people in our, spread out in the industry. So again, we are a strong and vital and important part, not only of New York City, but of the state of New York, and even of large cities around our country, because when you think about it, part of the business of Broadway are also the national touring shows that come out of the Broadway shows, and many of the theaters where our shows go, those are important centerpieces of many towns with hotels and restaurants and other businesses. So it's not, it's really, our economic impact is huge, let alone the artistry that we convey, and the memories that we give people. You ask somebody, what was your first movie in a movie theater? Maybe they remember it, but if you ask somebody their first Broadway show, that they remember
Broadway
vividly.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember when my father was teaching me about seven brides to seven sisters.
7 brides for 7 brothers.
Teaching me the songs from Oklahoma, all of that magical. And I grew up, and then I went to Sondheim, and and all of
the master. Yes,
it is beyond. It's something amazing that I love, and many people do. Now, so obviously that's not going anywhere. But let's talk about the catastrophe. Okay, what happened before and what?
Well, just to recap, March 12th. One producer from every show was called into the Broadway League, and basically that's when, the decision had come down from from Albany to shut down. And it's interesting because a few people, there was a conversation about us shutting down earlier, but we really needed to wait for that government say so. So then, for insurance reasons and other business reasons, we weren't doing it on our own decision, but it was a government mandate. And of course, thinking back to that time, 3 weeks. 4 weeks. April 15th, it was being bantered about as a reopening date. Actors were told, leave your stuff where it is. There's a show I'm a financial backer of called Six, an adorable new musical, which your kids will love. It's a little rock and roll about the 6 wives of Henry VIII. It was supposed to open at 6:30 that night, and the official word to everybody went out between 4 and 5 p.m. So imagine these actresses are already in their dressing room, receiving their opening night gifts and whatnot, and they're told you're not opening and just leave it. And as we all know how it unfolded, April 15th became June 8th, and June 8th became after Labor Day, and after Labor Day became after Christmas. And, you know, and we all sort of sat and held our breath and had a lot of conversations. I think all of us became proficient in Zoom. So we kept, were able to keep in touch. Everybody, put in their business interruption insurance claims. Each individual show obviously looked at what was right for them. I believe that at the time, the actors, we were able to compensate for a certain amount of time, that we could afford. And then we were able to help with health insurance for a certain amount of time. And then, because I've been asked about all of that, whether actors or other people that worked on the different shows, everybody, whomever was able to apply for unemployment insurance, however that was able to help them, the stimulus checks. Some of the sad part was really that a lot of people really left New York City when everybody started realizing the length that it was going to be. And normally, especially for actors, actors, maybe 90% or more of actors aren't employed, but there's always those other jobs. There's assistant jobs, there's restaurant jobs, there's temp jobs in offices, but those jobs didn't exist. They went back home. Maybe they went to their parents. Maybe they went back to family. Some of them left the city. Some subletted, some just left, some just gave up leases. So, everybody sort of kept track of where everybody was and what was going on. And then again, everybody was really looking at what they could do for their show. And every show has to really is its own little business, whether it was just open for 3 weeks or 10 years, and really had to look at the best way to conserve funds, keep the cast up and motivated, or stay in touch with everybody. And of course, try to stay with an ear to the ground. We have our Broadway League, which is our trade organization, which is for producers and theater owners and whatnot. So of course, that was one of my sources, as well as just talking to people that I work with in theater all over the country, as well as London partners. And everybody really, all of us hanging on information, all of us waiting to hear what's Dr. Fauci going to say tonight, all of us waiting on the vaccine. Again, it's really been, and it's not only the opening of the shows in New York, but, at the time I probably was involved with about 5 or 6 national tours that were out on the road, where those actors and those people got pulled back in and to come off the road. And then they either came back to New York or went back to where, their hometowns. And that's another conversation, because opening Broadway is one thing, but at least it's in one place in the state of New York. That's a whole nother conversation that we can even talk about later, is how the national tours are going to go back out, because you're sending maybe a company of 50, 60 people, but you're going from state to state. And as we found during the COVID period, not every state acted as on their own. What was going on from New York to Florida to Texas to California to Montana, everybody had their own rules and regulations and businesses. Some were open, some were totally shut. But again, that'll be looking at how everything is going. We'll show how we'll do the tours. So it was really been a time of really listening and trying to stay up as much as possible with the information so that we could come back.
I want to ask you in a second about the financials. What happened?
Sure.
Who paid the bill? But before that, the emotional effect on people. How did that affect people's? I mean, actors cannot practice. Everything shut down. Did people get into despair? And I don't know.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, actors, people in our business, they say there's no people like show people, and we really tend to be resilient, especially if you ever went behind the scenes of a big musical, and especially on days when it's a 2-show day, you would really wonder how these people get through it. So there's a lot of resilience and a lot of love and affection that goes on in our industry. It's a warm and huggy kind of, it's a business, but it's an arts business. Yes, of course, there were downtimes. I mean, I heard downtimes, from friends of mine that were, first responders in the medical field. My husband's in the medical field. So there was all of that world. And again, I think what we did was we did a lot of fundraising through the Actors Fund, through Broadway Cares. So what we do as an industry is we're pretty good at taking care of our own. Many people stood out. You know, you take like Patti LuPone, Nathan Lane, you know, some of the big names really were on every Zoom, on every fundraiser. You know, they did a 90th birthday for on Zoom, which was supposed to be live, but on Zoom for Sondheim. But that became a fundraiser. So that raised a couple of $100,000. And, you know, all of these fundraisers, especially in our community, benefited, you know, were funds that were raised to help other people in our community if they were having issues, financial issues with their rent, with healthcare. So between that and Broadway Cares, and again, even the small not-for-profit theaters, a lot of people turned it around and started, you know, I can think of a couple of people I know that started offering classes online that now have a big following. Some of the dancers now have exercise classes online. You know, people get creative. I have one friend who worked in independent film, and she's now, and I know a few people that did this, they became COVID experts for productions. So a lot of people got trained in how to work on film and television productions, because that came back sooner, but with tremendous, tremendous protocols. So you needed people on set to know how to, you know, for each scene, you know, how many people were allowed, what protective equipment needed to be there. Again, everybody sort of got resourceful. There's one incredible actor, dancer, Tony Award nominee, Robbie Fairchild. He opened a floral shop. I believe it's in Brooklyn or South. Anyway, he's doing very well with that. We sure hope he comes back, because he's an incredible dancer and performer. But again, a lot of people got creative, and everybody really tried to help keep everybody, you know, you hate to say that expression, stiff upper lip, you know, that we knew the science. We knew that we would be the last industry to come back, because we are about getting a lot of people in a room. And so we knew that that would happen. And we also knew that, especially as we went along and everybody was doing their homework, we knew that we wanted to reopen safely. So even when, as things started getting much better kind of rapidly, it seemed, by April and May, and when Governor Cuomo said, okay, Broadway can reopen, I think that was around May 15th, you know, it's not like reopening a restaurant where, okay, I can reopen and maybe I'm only at 50%, but I buy the food, I get my waiter, my wait staff, I can reopen, get my customers. You know, there's so much involved in getting a Broadway show geared up, let alone you want to have some time to sell your tickets. We had to come up with, you know, the Actors Equity and our backstage, all our unions. Every show has about 14 unions, but between our actors unions and all the different, you know, unions of people that do work in close proximity, they had to come up with their protocols, of which we now have tremendous protocols of how rehearsals will be, what it's going to be like backstage. Now, these protocols might be modified towards September in the fall as COVID is getting, you know, as there's less and it's getting better. But obviously there had to be protocols to start. We had to, which is what's going on now, you know, get in touch with the original cast, the cast that were at that time, and find out, are they coming back? Is everyone coming back? I mean, some were fortunate enough to move on to film and television and get some jobs. Others left the city.
Just before we get into now, I want to finish with what happened before. And ask you,
of course,
one, what happened with all the people that bought tickets back in the day? And two, financially, so who paid the bill? Did you guys get insurances back? Did the producers lose money? Because if you can also explain how it works, you explained it last time. You rent the place, you need to pay rent no matter what. You signed on a, what did they say to the producers? Don't pay the rent, we're good. I mean, who at the end of the day, you know, it's in the chain got hurt, and how? Well,
I would put it this way: the ticket holders didn't get hurt, because ticket holders were on almost every show just totally refunded. I know you and I discussed it a little before. I believe one of the shows that didn't, you know, Music Man, because Hugh Jackman is in it, and he's such an event because he hasn't been on Broadway for so long. So I believe what they did was they said, all right, you're supposed to see it, you know, January of 2021, but we're going to give you a ticket for January 2022. You know, I think they just moved everybody. And from what I understand, they were pretty successful in doing that. I know pretty much all of my shows, we refunded every ticket, of course, with saying, you know, but we look forward to seeing you when we do come back. And fortunately, pretty much every show is back on sale that's coming back, that's announced that it's coming back. So the tickets are open and available. And fortunately, The response so far has been very good. So yes, monies were refunded. Yes, there is some business interruption insurance, and I would say the majority of shows did get some solid money, some solid funds, which, everybody went to their carriers, Chubb, whomever they had, and, took a lot of documentation. So a lot of the shows are sitting on funds in the bank, which is good. Very careful of spending them. A lot of the companies servicing Broadway, even your ad agencies and whatnot, everybody, had people, laid people off, or which the theaters did as well, which the shows did as well. If you had, the staffs became smaller. The monthly bills, there was still some rent to be paid to landlords, but obviously the landlords, in many of the shows, the landlords themselves are producers on it. So of course they weren't looking to put a gun to anybody's head. Some of the shows, like I'm involved with a beautiful new musical called Sing Street, which was scheduled to open in April of 2020. What was decided to do was we gave back the theater, not to pay the rent, and we will probably come in this spring of 2022. Maybe we'll even take it out of town somewhere for a couple of weeks in the winter. That was just a decision made on that show. But almost all the other shows, The Minutes, which is another show I'm involved with, a really striking comedy from Tracy Letts, a brilliant writer, wrote August Osage County. That actually was supposed to be March 15th. So we were 3 days from opening when we had shut down. I believe we've announced opening for April 7th, and we're in a different theater. We're actually opening at Studio 54 because the theater that we were going to go into, the Court, the Schuberts own that, and they're doing a big renovation on it. So when that theater's ready, so and by the way, just so everybody knows who's watching, the theater owners have all, and I know some of the theaters are older than some of the theaters are newer, but they have all worked on the new filtration systems. I guess it's the MERV 13, the appropriate, stepped it all up. And I would think that you will find there will be a lot of, hand cleansing stations going through. I think we're going to find in theaters a lot of things being, touch free and all of that. So again, they've had this time to really, work on the theaters and make them as safe and as clean as possible. Now, in addition to the insurance, Senator Schumer was very involved with this. They came out with these Save Our Stages, which is the SVOG, they're grants. And in addition, productions, theaters, and this isn't just for Broadway, this is for venues for everyone across the country. It's through the SBA, but it's specific grants for whether it's a production, theater owners, and these could be a small community theater. But again, these are theaters and these are businesses that were hurt through COVID as well. If you were a talent manager or agent, it was all very detailed and listed in the regs of who could apply. But these grants are literally going out as we speak. They have them. They have the committees that are deciding how much money each show can get. So we are, fingers crossed, we showed through all the paperwork how much money we should have made if our audiences would have been there. So we're now hoping for some additional monies from the government that will even add on, which will be great, because of course it's going to cost us. It's going to cost us to reopen. I mean, it's already costing us now, even though we haven't reopened. We had to rehire, bring back staff. We're in the process now of, as I said, if the cast isn't coming back, a lot of Zoom auditioning going on, a lot of that, because a lot of the auditions still aren't in person. But everybody's gotten, directors and choreographers have gotten, and performers have gotten very savvy on presentation and on viewing. And then the next step will, of course, be rehearsals. And rehearsals will probably start for every show. I would venture a 3-week, anywhere from a 2 to a 4-week period. Again, it depends if it's a play, which doesn't need as much time, or a bigger musical. So again, we're going to be spending money before we start bringing in money. So obviously it's important that we do have money in the bank, which thank goodness we do.
So what you're saying is somehow we survived the storm. Nobody went bankrupt because the government supported, the insurance company supported.
Well, I don't know. I can't say that if anybody went bankrupt. There were, I think, to my knowledge, 3 shows that maybe said they weren't coming in. Gosh, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? But that was Lori. I'm trying to remember the name of the star. She's wonderful. I think that one just said no. And it could have been because she may have had TV commitments. There was a wonderful British comedy called Hangman. And they said, no, we're not going to wait. I'm trying to think, there might have been one more. But I would say almost everyone's coming back. And I know personally that even with, there's maybe 1 or 2 that are going to come in that haven't announced yet that will be back. But I've got 16 coming back to New York City between Broadway, between ones that we're running, ones that we're going to open in the spring of 2020, 2 off Broadway, and I've got one that's just starting, that I'm backing, that's just starting its little wheels up down at the Public Theater, that if all goes well, The Visitor, beautiful new musical at the Public Theater. If there's tickets left, it'll be, I think it starts in October. Beautiful. But again, all going well, that would be a Broadway spring or next fall. So again, let alone getting the national tours back out, and then a couple of new things. So, there, you know who this really hurt, Danny? A couple of our favorite little restaurants in the theater area, Hangs. They're gone. There are so many businesses that did go bankrupt or did close that I couldn't tell you the individual ones, but people that helped out in the costume industry, which I know got hard hit and had issues in getting some funding. There are so many, like I said, we're talking almost 100,000 people that somehow were making money because Broadway existed. And that's not all the shows. So of course there were people that went bankrupt and left the city and just said, I'm giving it up. And it's really kind of sad in that, and we hope that, that everybody's thriving wherever they are, and hope that they venture. We're also hoping, there's a bigger story to talk about, which is the New York City itself and coming back. And it's funny, a good friend of mine happens to be the president of the 47th Street, I guess they call it Diamond Street, but that jewelry trade, and contacted me a couple of weeks ago about coordinating tours, reopening press with the Broadway League. And I connected him because, again, it's a larger picture of the restaurant industry, the hotel industry, that whole Midtown area that is looking to say, first of all, I want to bring back everybody from the Upper East Side, let alone, our suburbs, Westchester, New Jersey, Long Island. We're big ticket goers and purchasers. So again, we have to make sure that we're properly re-welcoming our locals back. And then of course, domestic. Now I know that yesterday I went to my first in-person reading of a small play. It was not a big crowd. They were very careful, but it was on 43rd Street off of Broadway. And, it was kind of great and strange to be around there again, but there were people walking around, and they're tourists because they're looking up and they've got their phones with their cameras, and they're in and out of the Hard Rock Cafe and all of those places that are, so it's encouraging to see more people. But obviously, as we get towards September, when the real reopenings happen, it's going to be a concerted effort with us, with the city, with the state, to really, remember I think the campaign was, that's the 80s, but the old I Love New York campaign, but having that campaign of reminding people how wonderful New York City is. And there's a lot of entertainment going on in New York City right now. It may not be in a Broadway theater or a Broadway show, but there's a lot of things that if people are in the city or come into the city, that I could tell them, no, we can keep you really busy. You could keep yourself really busy. I mean, I know the restaurants will be thrilled to see you.
I want to ask you a couple of questions. Okay, I'm
sure.
Right now. We'll soon talk about your shows, what you like, but we're getting back to business, right? I'm part of the industry now. I'm right now on Ticketmaster, checking out Hamilton.
Okay.
Which I'll talk to you about in a second about and all of that. Now first of all, I see it's pretty booked. I mean, I'm already, where am I? In November. Pretty sold out. But I see tickets are from 150 to 250. I don't remember.
Grab them now, and you can sell them later.
For 600, 700. So my question to you is, what are we anticipating, given that the Europeans cannot come here to watch the films, the shows? How do you see it getting back? What does that tell us, this price range right now?
Well, here's what it's telling us. And I think we all sort of knew this coming into this post-COVID era, is that, usually we had a better way to predict, especially for certain shows, what the trends of the ticket sales will be. But obviously we're seeing now, the news changes every week. I mean, the word that I walk around saying, and many of us do, is it's fluid, because we could get a new piece of information tomorrow. By September 1st, October 1st, we could be every ban could be lifted, and everybody out of, potentially Europe or Asia who's been wanting to come to New York, I think everything's going to be very last minute. So even though the tickets for some of the shows are selling extremely well, but are there more gaps than there might have been if we were just in regular selling times? Sure, because people, a lot of people left New York City with the thought of what I'm hearing now, but I'm gonna go, it's the summer, it's already 90 degrees. I'm gonna really I'll be back in the fall. I miss the city, but I know in the fall is gonna be the action. So I think people are delaying their, that purchase of ticket, whether it's a ticket sale, because they've sort of put that part of their life on hold. And there's going to be some point maybe into August or, toward there, that everyone's going to wake up and go, oh, all right, I really want to see that, especially as the advertising really starts. The sales, the good part is that the ticket sales that we've had have really been organic. The shows were really some of them have spent $0. It's been maybe a little bit of social media, but a lot of it's been people that have missed it so much and have missed theater so much that they've wanted to have their tickets. Domestic tourists, people that I speak with around the country, letting me know, all right, are you going to be in town October 15th? Because I see these shows will be reopened and I'm seeing this, and this. So people are already kind of pre-planning, but I think we're just going to have a lot of closer to date purchasing, which of course maybe is a little bit more nail biting, but I think once we get back into the groove, then the groove will continue and the hot shows will continue to be the hot shows. At least we're having the conversation about, buying, and that there are sales. So, and that part's really great. And again, there's just so much that we're learning. People have asked me about mask wearing for a Broadway show, or are they going to need a vaccine card? And again, I just was on a league call with the head of a league yesterday, and my first show that starts, Hadestown, our first performance to an audience is September 2nd. And again, so much can change by September 2nd in terms of, what the government's going to say, when it's going to come down to us, what we're going to say. Right now, I know that it's mandated. The shows can ask the actors and backstage staff to be vaccinated. And remember those close quarters and all of that. Now, will that be necessary for audiences? I don't know. I know for certain events, you just had 20,000 people at MSG last week to see the Foo Fighters. I believe all of those people had to show a vaccination card. But again, that's a lot of people, but it's a one-time event. And it was the third week of June. We don't know what's going to happen the first week of September. But I will tell you this, that because I've already bought tickets online for some other shows not mine, that I'm excited to see again. I can't wait to see Lion King again and a few other ones. I want to be supportive. They will be sending emails. We will be getting notices. We will not be uninformed in terms of, when you come to the theater, here's what you have to do. Bring this, do that. I could just take a good guess that, especially for streets like 44th and 45th Street, which have so many theaters, it's very possible that the opening times might be staggered. So maybe 2 shows start at 7, 2 start at 7:30, 2 start at 8. So there aren't as many people on the street. Again, these are the conversations that are going on with the league and the city and the unions right now. But ticket holders will be totally informed way before they have to come in and go to the show. So nobody's going to be left not knowing what to do.
Now, I want to ask you another question. You are also involved with, other forms of entertainment, and we want to talk about that for a second. But I have a nice way to ask you that question. So first of all, I'm very proud to say that my kids, all of my kids, 5 of them, which is a lot of all,
God bless,
right, including the 5-year-old twins, know Hamilton by heart. They actually go to Alexa and ask you to play Hamilton, and they know everything, even the bad words, which they like to remind me that there are bad words in Hamilton. And now they're starting to learn In the Heights, which I've seen, by the way, in London. So and they watch the movie. By the way, it says if you go to one of the websites that parents control, it says it's not a movie for kids because nobody would survive 2.5 hours. I can tell you, my 5-year-old kids watched it twice from the beginning.
It's so colorful. It is mesmerizing.
And here's my question, because I'm leading us to the question about the film industry and other mediums. So I saw the film. I thought it was great. I think it could use some more editing. It shouldn't have been 2.5 hours, but it's great. I heard it's lost money. I heard they invested $55 million. I heard they invested a lot of marketing and introducing, but because people didn't really come back to the film, the film right now is not really making money. You're not familiar with that, I see by your...
The only thing I'm going to say is, again, I'm not familiar with their finances at all, but the only thing I'm going to say is, remember that film has a really long tail. It's a different business than theater, so, which has a long tail, but in a different way. I don't know yet if they've gotten, the conversation about international has come up. There's a ways for it to go before I think anybody can really calculate whether it's made money or lost money. The film was filmed before COVID. I know one of the producers, and I remember him happily talking about what was going on uptown.
You saw it?
Oh, I saw an early screening of it, and which was nice, which was nice because I was able to put it on the big TV at home and dance around with it. I think it is, and whether it's long or not, they did a little bit of changing from the original, but I think it's true to the original. I think what it is I want to say the kind of like good post-COVID. If you look at the movies that came out post-depression, back in the 30s, where Ginger and Fred and the Ziegfeld Follies and all of that. I think these dance numbers were, the choreography and what went on with it is so, again, it's a very hopeful, it's very joyful, and I think if you're just going to take it and we take the cynicism aside and all the little technical reviewings that we can give with it, and you go by the innocence of your young children that are enjoying it and are mesmerized by it, it's because it's just making them happy and joyful. And I think we've all been through something the last 15 months, and a little bit of happy and joy is okay. A little bit of silly, fun viewing is okay. It's a conversation that a lot of us are having, even with theater, or, a lot of people, there's a lot of creativity will have come out of this time. And a lot of people have written things and musicals and stories. And of course, we're going to have gut-wrenching stories, and we're going to have uplifting stories, and it's like, what are people going to really want to watch? What do audiences really want? And there's certainly a part of me that, of course, there are important stories to tell, because a lot of things besides theater, a lot of things happened in the last 15 months besides COVID. A lot of important conversations happened and information came out. So there are important stories to be told, but I also think we're at a moment where people right now want to be uplifted and joyful. We don't want COVID the musical, unless somebody does something really hysterically funny with it and we can eventually laugh, but we're not laughing yet. There was too much, we've all had, and know people with had, and that still are feeling loss and pain. And I think entertainment, with the entertainment industry, whether it's theater or film or all of these new, modes of entertainment that are out and coming out, it's there for us to be able to live in a little bit in our minds and our fantasies and find that little bit of happy. So, you get through the day a little bit easier. I mean, that's part of it. It's wonderful when you can entertain and educate as well. And I think it's a lovely slice of life, that film. Again, I'm not privy to the financials, but I wouldn't, I wouldn't put a big, red mark on it yet. It's got a long life ahead of it. And we're nowhere near award season. And what happens is things get near award season is there are resurgences. And remember, not everybody yet is still comfortable going into a movie theater, and that can change. So I wouldn't say that it's a loss, but they did spend they chose to spend a lot of money on it.
By the way, do you think that Lin-Manuel Miranda changed Broadway because suddenly you have rap kind of because Rent was also kind of weird that way, right? They also had like that kind of
You know,
it also had like rap kind of.
Danny, but remember something. If you really study Hamilton, yes, there's rap, but there's everything. I mean, he's got some beautiful traditional Broadway songs. I mean, it's Quiet Uptown. What a ballad. I mean, that's a tearjerker. It's a, you know, so when everyone says that rap musical, he's got so many forms and styles of music in there. I think what Hamilton proved is, you know, the old adage of somebody saying, could we make a musical out of, you know, can we make a musical about this guy who, you know, fought in the revolution and then became the treasurer? And, you know, I think it's proven that if you do it well and you find your hook in, and obviously if you're a genius, but if you find your hook in, you know, I had this little musical that I just fell in love with early on. And it was about a high school guy that was really kind of sociopath. And then another kid kills himself, and boy, like, no, until a couple of smart people and myself said yes. And you have Dear Evan Hansen, which is such a show about the messaging is so beautiful and so poignant. And you know, the wonderful song in there, You Will Be Found. But if you just pulled out, you know, the initial storyline, you'd go, why would you make a musical of that? So I think what Lynn really did show was, and if you do it well and you dig into that interior, there are so many topics that can be delved into. And now, of course, there's much more technology that can be used in live theater as well. Again, it just needs to be, it needs to be good. It needs to have a reason to exist in a Broadway theater. You know, Broadway's about location. There's 41, 42 theaters. You need to have, let's say, I can't talk pricing now, but I used to say, do you have 8,000 people that want to spend $150 a week to see this? There's some wonderful works. There's some beautiful live theater that just works better or is better in a 399 seat theater or a 199 seat theater. That's the feel of it. You know, not every show needs to go to Broadway, and a lot of shows don't go to Broadway and have long lives and good economic lives, but they're not necessarily in that Broadway house. You know, they just serve a smaller, you know, they're served better with smaller audiences, and maybe they serve, and they go to different kinds of theater and get licensed and have lives. So again, you know, Hamilton, you know, again, if you just read it, forget about even listening to it, but just read it. It's just his inner rhyming, the poetry, and it's just, it's brilliant. But again, Sondheim, brilliant. You know, we've been blessed in our Broadway world to just have writers over these 100 years that have, you know, and every time it moves along, somebody new comes along. You know, look what Nias did with Hadestown, what David wrote with the band's Visit. You know, they explored styles of music that everybody said, no, that can't work on Broadway. It's Middle Eastern sounding. No, that's kind of like folky. That's not going to work on Broadway. But again, it was just done so beautifully that it worked.
The band's Visit is from originally Israel. My father.
I know. I sat with a wonderful filmmaker in Tel Aviv about it.
I want to ask you, I have so many questions to ask you. I never get to it. I mean, we should do just more and more sessions. I mean, before we'll end with your productions and what you're doing right now, I want to ask you this question about how do you evaluate the success of Broadway? And I'll give you a couple of examples. If somebody would come to you and say, hey, we're doing a show about Spiderman, you two are writing the music, or how about we'll do a show about vampires and Elton John writes the music, you'd say, well, I would have said, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then I'll come and say, how about a Broadway about dolls making fun of porn on stage? Or how about we make fun of the Mormons? Would that apply to all those that come with the cameras from abroad, all the, you know, that are expected to find mainstream? This is not mainstream, this is South Park humor. And or rap in about a guy from many years ago. So all these huge successes that obviously don't tick the boxes of a real Broadway musical, how it should look like, against all those big, I mean, when I have to say another thing, when I saw both Elton John one, I didn't see Spiderman, but I saw Elton John, I thought there wasn't one single song that I thought was good or that I remember. By the way, the same thing with Mormons. I don't remember any song from Avenue Q or from Mormons, but I think they had a magic Rent was, I think, in a way, some kind of a breakthrough. So how do you evaluate the success? Because look at those big flops with U2 and Elton John versus those.
Well, I can speak to this. I was actually asked in to look at Spiderman. I think they'd only spent about 25, 30 million. Spiderman, there's a wonderful book that the gentleman that wrote the book for the musical wrote about the making of the musical, and it's fascinating. The person who was supposed to produce it, who was a really experienced Broadway producer, I think they had signed their deal for 2-3 days and he dropped dead of a heart attack. So your leader kind of wasn't there, and then U2 was off touring, and you had Julie Taymor, who's brilliant, but your directors, your creatives, you tell them how much money to spend. And there were a lot of demand, she wanted a lot of things certain ways. And I remember listening to it, number one, listening to the music and going, but I remember looking at the financials. So Denny, because of, from where my perspective is, yes, of course, the number one thing has to be the artistry. But the next thing I look at, of course, is who are the rights holders? Who would I be working with? Who would I be bringing in my investors with? And let me look at the financial deal. Have you spent money yet? Where have you spent it? What are your plans? Who's on your team? There's that whole other world that's not on the stage about the business of show business and the business of Broadway. That's incredibly important. Now, there was a show back in 1941 that was absolutely 100% different than any show that had been on, and they didn't think it was going to last at all because it told the story and people died and it had a ballet in the middle of it. And that was Oklahoma. That was destined for failure. But again, because the 1930s had fabulous musicals, but they were all, okay, we're telling a story and now we're going to sing. Here was Oklahoma, songs integrated into the show. So it's not like Hamilton was the first to be revolutionary, no pun, but every generation or so, then you had Rodgers and Hammerstein do South Pacific, which spoke about, the prejudice in a certain way. So then you had my buddy Jim Rado do Hair, and then Calcutta. So again, then go another 10 years, then you had Chorus Line, which opened the back door of what it's like for performers, and that, what I did for love. So again, Rent, every show. As far as Interview with a Vampire, again, not involved with it. I'm actually going to be involved with the show Bucket List that Elton John is writing the music for. And again, you could look at every great performer. You could look at someone like Sondheim, who, even a show like Merrily We Rolled Along, which didn't succeed as a Broadway show, but the music, there are songs out of there that are performed all the time. And people really, it's like a little gem, but the book didn't work. He wrote a musical maybe 15, 20 years ago called The Frogs. It didn't work. It's Sondheim. Even a genius can have one that just, for whatever reason, it just doesn't happen. But, you've got to take in the overall look and work of their body of music. So maybe Rent has to thank Hair, and maybe Hair has to thank Oklahoma. And, maybe Oklahoma has to go back and thank Showboat. Showboat was from the 1920s, and that also dealt with more public issues. It wasn't just the Ziegfeld Follies and the Review. So again, I'm sure 10 years from now, 5-10 years from now, because innovations are happening so quickly, which is getting on to the fact that next to Broadway, we're going to be finding a lot of immersive theater, which may or may not be in a Broadway theater, but will still be live theater. We're going to see these, and every innovation is just sort of building on top of what the generation before them did. And, there's some kid out now that, like your children, have studied Hamilton the same way that Lynn probably studied Sondheim and Rodgers and Hammerstein and Stephen Schwartz and all of those, greats, and took that and then put their own personality in on it. But they've grown up with, technology. So maybe there's something new that they're adding into it. And in 10 years from now, it's going to be, this is revolutionary, but it's really just the next step.
But what? One of my favorite musicals of all times was when Sondheim had enough of Broadway and he said, "The hell with you all, I'm doing what I want." And he did Sweeney Todd. I thought Sweeney Todd was one of the best masterpieces.
Talk about a topic that should never be a musical. One of the all-time greats.
Right.
All-time greats. It'll be back. I bet you another couple of years it'll be back. Some wonderful young performer right now is out there going to be the demon barber of Fleet Street.
Was it successful? Was it successful?
Oh, well, it's just been done so many times that I can't say what it did on its first run. Gosh, what year was that? I think early 70s, because I think Follies was, there's Company, Follies. Oh, I mean, I'm such a fan, but I never remember the years. But I'm sure over the years, it's been done so many times, the film, that, you know, its success has gone on. But just remember, the songs get, you know, they're performed over and over again. And I'm sure there are, especially as we're reopening now, there are, you know, town theaters and universities and around the world, people around the world singing and performing that show. Because again, it was just proving it's very, very dark, but he put in the appropriate amount of humor. And it really was about family and justice and love. It was about this man's wanting revenge for the loss of his wife and daughter, not knowing, you know, knowing I'm assuming everyone saw it, but you know what I'm saying. It was really about family and love and revenge. And he did get his just ends, you know, for being a murderer, but it's told in such a brilliant way. You know, there have been so many productions of it. There was the recent one, the one not too long ago, was Michael Severus and Patti LuPone, where all the actors played the instruments. You know, there've been and then they did fabulous version down at Barrow Street Theater off Broadway, where they turned the theater into the pie shop.
Yeah, I've seen all of the versions. And you know what I think that's interesting? You know, many musicals have, you know, like even Rent, most of the songs are good, but this one, like every song is brilliant. Now,
you know, Danny, and it's always so subjective, because so many times, you know, I like going to a lot of the 54 Below and all the little cabarets, and a lot of the Broadway performers do, and they find interesting, obscure songs that sometimes there could be a couple of big hits out of a musical that are so big that sometimes we haven't taken on some of the smaller ones, and you hear a wonderful artist interpret it, and you realize, you know, that's a beautiful song on its own. It just got overshadowed because those other 5 songs just became bigger.
So what I want to for us to finish this conversation with, which is always exciting. By the way, I have to tell you, with all the sessions I'm doing, I usually have questions and I do prep calls. I know, you know, it's gonna go like that. I don't even really. It's just so. I want to ask.
So it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
You're a fan, so it's wonderful.
I want to know about you right now, which projects you're working on, and some advice from you, what we should take a look at and watch for, and your recommendation.
I'm happy to tell you. Okay, so here's what's coming back that I can talk for myself. The first one is Hadestown, starts September 2nd. I'm a happy investor in this new musical I told you about, 6, which I think is around the 17th of September. I'm an investor in Hamilton, which is September 14th. Then we move down. Moulin Rouge is next, Little Shop of Horrors, end of September. We get into October. We've got Tina, Ain't Too Proud, Jagged Little Pill, To Kill a Mockingbird, off-Broadway, The Play That Goes Wrong, a beautiful new play, very honored to be on the producing team of this. It's called Thoughts of a Colored Man, and we're bringing brand new talent to Broadway. Our writer is Keenan Sott II, director is Steve Broadnax III, and just a beautiful, thoughtful play, and that also starts in October, so it's nice to have some new faces and new talent come to Broadway and be backing that. And then moving a little further on, Dear Evan Hansen coming in November, opening in December, and then Company with Patti LuPone, because we're waiting for Patti in her schedule. Company will be back then, coming back at that point. And then going into 2022, the Tracy Letts play that I mentioned, The Minutes, the little off-Broadway one again down at the Public, The Visitor, which is going to be in the fall. This beautiful music, I have Sing Street. We haven't announced anything yet, but that will probably be in the spring of 2022. And 1 or 2 other things that have yet to be announced, and something I'm really excited about that I'm very involved with. London, big new musical, Get Up, Stand Up, the Bob Marley musical. And we're opening in the West End. We start October 1st, we open October 20th. And who doesn't love Bob Marley music? His life story is incredible. Again, it's a wonderful creative team, and Arinze Kenye, the star, he's amazing. And similar to other shows that have come from London to Broadway, I would guess maybe 18 months to 2 years, and then that'll make it to Broadway. We'll, put together a Broadway company and get that all brought over here. So that's just the theater side, for what's coming back. There's some films that I've been involved with, but one that I'm really excited about is, and we should start pre-production next month. It's called Lily. It's based on Lily Ledbetter, the Little Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which is, it's a true story. The Fair Pay Act was based on her story about a woman who, from the South, worked Goodyear Tire Plant and finds out, rose her way up to a certain level. They managed to let go of her because they still weren't treating women that well. And she manages to find out that she was being paid substantially less than the other men at her position. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court, didn't win there, but RBG supported it. And sure enough, when Obama became president, he passed the Lily Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. And to this day, women are still being paid 79 cents on the dollar, women of color even less toward men. And I think it's an important story in film to come out because, as we've discussed, if we can use film to entertain and educate, Patricia Clarkson is playing the role of Lily Ledbetter, going to film down, I think, in Louisiana in the fall. If anybody's interested in coming on board, we still have a little bit of room. Important story. It's an Erin Brockovich, Norma Ray kind of world, but that's going to be a big, important film. And I'm really proud to be supporting that. With some other things coming up. In terms of live theater, there will be other live theater besides Broadway that I'm personally very excited about. Immersive theater was really starting to happen before COVID. I had a wonderful little nightclub musical called Oscar at the Crown. We were running out in Brooklyn, and we were going to come into the city, and we were going to go to London, and then COVID stopped us. But again, the actors, you sort of danced around with the actors as they told the stories. But immersive theater is going to be very, very big, especially, it's something that the 40 and unders really want, but it's for everybody. But again, and different types of immersive theater where you're in the middle of the entertainment. Rumor has it that there will be something based on The Great Gatsby where we as audience members can come in costume and partake in the entertainment. This particle ink that I told you that I've been involved with, that's going to be more of where you do walkthroughs with technology in the storytelling, and it's with new technology, augmented reality. And if anyone's interested in learning more about that, big wave of the future, because they're also going to develop an app. So again, things with live theater that are exciting, that are not necessarily in a Broadway house, because not everything has to be in the Broadway house. And I think it's great, to have the opportunity. All right, tonight I'm going to sit and be entertained. And then maybe next weekend I'm going to go and I'm going to be in the entertainment or be part of the entertainment. And, some will be with actors, some, where you're part of the action, and some are going to be with all this interesting new technology that's come out. And then I've got another couple of projects where I'm fingers crossed that we're, one in particular, a two-hander play that's sitting in front of a streaming service that we're hoping to do and looking to do as a streaming event. So, again, talk about what you did during COVID, trying to take some product and pivot it in a different direction. And it doesn't mean it wouldn't come back and be on a stage, but I think we've seen that a lot of people, and especially we found out that there were audiences that maybe don't have that much access to live theater because they, even their local town may not have one, or they have to travel to the, regional theater, but they still like seeing theater things in that form, and can be provided between Broadway HD and Broadway On Demand. But that's just a world that's been broadening, and that's just become another interesting source of economic source for investors and for us to look at for our shows, because it's another option going down the road of another revenue stream. So there's really a lot going on. But of course, the number one thing that I'm excited about is just, I just want to be in that. I just want to be in the theater with people. And again, I've seen some of my own shows dozens of times. And even though it's the same show, but you're with a different audience, and it's the energy of the audience that just pulls you through it. It's a communal experience. Even though we've been watching a lot of TV and wonderful things at home or alone, or maybe with another person, sometimes it's kind of fun to laugh or cry with the crowd.
Well,
it just amplifies that emotion because we've missed the human experience. That's what one of the main things I think we've learned from COVID is we missed other people. We missed the hug. We missed the emotion.
you mentioned your investor in Hamilton. Were you an investor in Hamilton since day one, or is it?
You know, I was very, very fortunate that I was invited to an early workshop. And I will tell you, reading of it, basically that's when, shows are presented to other, producers, people in the industry, not even sometimes for financial reason, but also just because, you're in the business. What's your opinion? Do you like it? You don't like it? And a lot of us would go to a lot of things. We knew it would be good and the buzz was good, but you had to see this room of people within the first minute, just lean in and go, oh my God, we are witnessing genius. And fortunately, I had worked with one of the producers before, and she was quite lovely. I grabbed her at at the intermission time of this reading and said, like, anything I can, I just need to be a part of this. This is truly something spectacular. And believe me, they worked on it and worked on it and worked on it, but it was so there. And the emotion was so there, and the genius, again, of his words, of the styling of it, plus, the director, what the director and choreographer did, what those guys did, again, and moving the people around, and the fact that they were using actors that were modern day people, real people, representing historical figures, just brought it so into the moment. Again, it was just a room where we just went, we all went crazy.
Well, will they bring In the Heights to Broadway now?
Will it come back? That's up to them. I mean, they could, I was not a part of In the Heights. That's always a decision. Revivals are an interesting business because you have to look at it and say to yourself,
but it's a revival after the guy has made it big time with Hamilton. So it's
right. Oh yeah, no, agreed. But again, if the producers decide, in talks with the theater owner, that they feel that whatever their money they're going to spend to revive it, again, it's a financial decision. We know that it's good. That's no question. But again, it's really going to be a matter, maybe they'll do it now. Maybe they'll want to wait a couple of years and then capture it because everybody will really be hungry for it. That's always a conversation, because Arthur Miller plays get revived. Certain things, people are asking, like, when is Mame coming back? Or when will the next revival of Hair come back? And I'm going, there will be one, but I think it's just, we need a little bit more time. A little bit more time for that next younger generation. When your kids are about 5-10 years older, then it'll be the right time to bring it back, because then they'll be the revolutionaries. So again, with a revival, the conversation again, and maybe at that moment you want to tweak the revival a little bit because maybe there's something going on at that moment in the world or in society that you need to address, the way that, like, last year, losing track of time, 2 years ago, when they did that revival of Oklahoma, they gave it a bit of a different spin. Revivals sometimes take, like when Diane Paulus did Hair, with Jim Rado's permission, but sometimes it's putting that little spin or that to make it feel, yes, it's the original, but it feels contemporary.
Yeah.
Or you just do a flat out revival like Hello Dolly, like when we did Hello Dolly, and it was just sumptuous and gorgeous and, just, entertaining. And again, that's really a combination of the rights holders, if the creatives are still alive, deciding if they think it's the right moment and if they have the right talent to come in and do it.
Just last question. We're way past an hour, but I have so many questions for you. So just to understand how the industry works. So when Disney does a project, right, the big productions of Disney, you as a producer can join them and get a piece of
Disney's pretty much their own. I have been a partner with Beetlejuice was with that's Warner's theatrical, different studio. It depends, because even when it's been a big film, sometimes the rights are purchased and the film studio is a part of it, but it's not under them. What's happened is, the film studios realized how much money there was to be made on Broadway. And that's why in the last 5-10 years, you've seen so many, you'll see more. A lot of the labels, the music labels, are now going through their artists. Like look at Jagged Little Pill with Alanis, and again, really brilliantly done, where they took the songs, and the songs were so emotional and wonderfully written and beautifully written and sculptured that they were able to write a wonderful story around it. You're going to be seeing more of that again, because everybody's realizing when a Broadway show works, it's not just the mother company on Broadway. It's the national tours, it's the international, and it's all of these productions that can just go on for years and years and years. And fees continue to come back to the original mother company. And that's why the studios keep coming to us. Disney's one of the ones, they do, they're their own, but Lion King saved that corporation. I mean, they back in the late 90s, I mean, that was just huge. It's still huge for them, but that was, and that again showed that, it was doable, that all of that was, if you do it right. But they already had that beautiful music and that beautiful story. But look at, Aladdin, I believe, is coming back. Frozen's going to go on tour forever. Great name. We're not worried about Disney.
Yeah, I mean, and Frozen, nobody knew it would be such a success. I mean, the part when she changes her dress, my 5-year-old collapses to the floor every single time she sees that. How did she do that? And it's so. Wendy Federman, it's always such a pleasure to speak to you, and it's also interesting that we should definitely do this again.
I'm always happy to talk about it. We've got the Tony Awards September 26th. I don't want to jinx myself, but considering I didn't plan it this way, but I am on the producing team of all 3 musicals nominated. So I guess there will be number 10 joining those buddies eventually, but I do got some nice play. It's the sad part is the plays and the revival of the plays, those finished their runs back then, but the 3 musicals, Tina, Jagged Little Pill, and Moulin Rouge are coming back if you did not get to see them. And a lot of people didn't because they were new for, the 2019-2020 season. They will be back, and watch the Tony Awards. There'll be, channel 2 as usual. And, if you've seen the shows, you'll appreciate it. And if you haven't seen it, you'll understand why you need to. And support our industry, support the city, support the industry, have dinner in a local restaurant, buy something in a local store in Midtown, because if you really want to help, again, like you asked if anybody who got hurt, it's not just the theaters and the theater business, but it's all those little businesses around us that took a beating because the neighborhood got quiet. So, everybody's support will really be appreciated.
Wendy, I'm looking forward to seeing you in person, to seeing
Me too, you.
Now we moved here so we can see your shows, right? All of them.
Excellent.
So
in the fall. Absolutely.
Thank
Absolutely.
You so much, Wendy, stay safe, and hopefully we'll meet one another after the summer. Enjoy your summer vacation.
Absolutely. You too, Danny.
Thank you, everybody.
Be well. Thank
Bye-bye.
you for having me on.
Thank you for coming again.
Pleasure.